Today, we're going underground with Craig Johnson, Hibbs Luxury Homes Director of Construction in Utah. We're talking about what excavation actually involves, what surprises and information we've found post-dig, and we break down the least photogenic phase of the build. Enjoy!
Unless you're building nerds like us, you're probably not posting pictures of your foundation on Instagram. And it really isn't going to make a lot of vision boards anyway. There isn't much oohs and ahs when it comes to excavation and foundation. But here's the thing. Everything you love about that house starts with what happens in this first phase of construction. How level are your floors? How dry is your basement? Is the indoor air that you're breathing clean? And what about the longevity of the home? Well, it all comes down to what happens during the first, some call it the ugly phase, but it's the most important few weeks of construction. Craig, great to have you with us. Thank you very much for your time. You have a very interesting background, and it's one of the things that I know makes you very successful in what you do. Tell everybody how you got into the industry and what are some of the things you've done.
I think it started kind of all the way back in high school. I was involved in like a magnet program that kind of specified on details and learning how to read blueprints and kind of broad engineering as a whole. I got into trade work as a excavator and a flat footing and foundation guy right when I got out of the military, and spent a lot of years digging holes and moving dirt, and then started, I guess, running homes and small commercial buildings about 2016-ish, and then came up to the Wasatch back about 6 years ago. Haven't left.
And you're our director of construction. We are absolutely thrilled to have you a part of the team. And you play a very important role in what we're doing, and especially in the Park City market. Talk about the importance of the excavation phase and the foundation phase for some of the beautiful homes that we are building in the Park City area.
Yeah, it's huge. You're starting off with a clean slate, basically, not getting that first sequence of events, your excavation, your foundation, your footing done correctly, can tailspin your house out of control like really quickly. So just paying attention to, what's coming up when the excavators are moving the dirt and how that's going to impact your footing guys. It's a constant game of, checks and balances, trying not to spend too much of the client's money that is necessary.
Craig, let's talk about some of the lessons learned with the excavation first. Because of where we are building, we frequently are running into rock. Talk about some of the conditions in which we're building and some of the mitigation methods that we have to use and how we communicate with clients regarding what we're doing and things like that.
First things first is just being in this environment constantly, using that expertise to kind of get it in front of the clients and say, look, we've done a bunch of work in that area. Just getting in front of the client's soil condition and having that conversation early is paramount. You don't want to wait until you're, 4 feet in the ground and you're hitting rock. And that's the first time the client, has ever been told that there's potential to have rock on their lot, period. And some of the mitigation, I guess, it's just that, just trying to stay ahead of it. Is it worth hammering? Is it worth blasting? Can we store this material somewhere close by? Do we need to haul it all off?
And we just did experience a project where we had to blast the foundation. Walk us through that a little bit.
Yeah, blasting's cool. It's a lot of fun to watch. Not every lot is the same. Not every lot can be blasted, but the ones that can be blasted, the cost can sometimes be a little bit more expensive, but it's way less time consuming. A blast of a home can take, a week with prep time, whereas hammering that same house out could take up, 2 to 3 months. So it's just kind of situation by situation, circumstance by circumstance, but a lot of fun to be a part of that.
And St. Louis is not a little bit, but a lot different market, right?
It
So,
is. It
yeah.
is. We occasionally have to deal with rock, but certainly not like the Park City market. We did have a home probably about 6, 7 years ago in St. Charles County where we ended up blasting that foundation because of the rock that we ran into. But generally in the St. Louis market, we're running into clay or plastic soil is kind of the terminology we use here. It seems like it's in about 50% of the builds here. And if you run into it, you have to over excavate, come back in, backfill with rock, and prepare for your footings and foundation. Because if you build on that clay, if it gets wet, it expands. If it dries out, it contracts, and it can really play havoc with your foundations. But different parts of the country have different issues. For example, down in Texas and Florida, they don't even build basements down there. They have their own issues and all. So every part of the country, Craig is right. What you want to make sure is you're talking with your builder before the project begins and talk to them about what are some of the unexpecteds that could come up during the excavation phase. Here in St. Louis, we have our excavator put together a mitigation plan. And again, most of it here is related to clay or plastic soil. We know what the remedy is. We have to over excavate 2 feet. We have to haul it. We have to dump it. We have to compact rock. Sometimes we have to engineer it in compacted lifts with an engineer looking it over. So we always put a contingency in our budget in the St. Louis market where, the client knows exactly what that cost is going to be. Craig, we try to do the same thing in Park City with our project managers and making sure we at least have some money in the budget there for rock, correct?
Absolutely. I mean, it is kind of the nature of this market. Unfortunately, it's super hard to quantify that, but absolutely, we do put some sort of contingency into our budget, or at least have that conversation with the client. We've had a few clients that have said, "I don't want it in there. I'm aware of the problem, and I'm aware it could cost me money, but I don't want it to be a part of our budget." And that's okay too. We had the conversation with them and made them aware of the situation.
My question is, outside of St. Louis and Park City, I mean, are those pretty good examples of the two types of excavation problems, or are there other things that people would want to look for in other markets?
Every state and even county to county, even within Utah, can vary a lot. Just down the road in Midway, did a bunch of homes out there several years ago and ran into a problem where we dug up fossilized seabed. We had to do all kinds of crazy excavation and like weird support pillars that were drilled down into the dirt to kind of help stabilize all that old soil that had all these, organics that were just shifting around in it constantly. It is, yeah, it's like a whole nother world. I mean, there's entire industries that are just around how to handle soil and stuff. So it's a huge, huge what if factor.
And that's where experience, especially someone with your background, your experience, that's where that really matters because you know how to handle the varying conditions and you know the importance of communicating with the client and with the project managers and with everybody what we're facing and what the possible solutions are.
Yeah. I mean, excavation can kind of be like a little bit of a taboo conversation if you don't know how to explain it correctly. It can kind of seem to the client that you're just working around in circles. Are you charging me all this money because you have no idea what's going on? You're just taking your excavator's word for it. Or you're able to like comprehensively break it down and explain to them why your excavation has increased a couple $100,000, which is a huge potential out here in this Park City market. Understanding, the lingo, the literature, the what is actually happening in the field and being able to break that down for a client to digest is very important.
Do you agree with me that the excavation phase can be the most frustrating phase of a build?
Yes, 100%.
And it's because of these unknowns.
It's because of the unknowns. It never goes fast enough. Nobody wants to look at a hole being dug or an empty hole. Nobody wants to pay for dirt to be brought in or brought out. Like it's just a nuisance. And I agree. Like I get it. Like we're paying several tens, if not hundreds of thousands of dollars just to move dirt. Like how silly is that, right? But it's a frustrating process because nobody cares about that kind of stuff. It's not glamorous.
Walk me through the first 2 weeks after groundbreaking from your perspective. Like, what's going on as soon as you get that equipment on site, and what wouldn't your client know is happening that's really happening behind the scenes?
On site, it starts with grubbing and haul off, where we're especially in this area in the Wasatch Back, None of it's been cleared, so it's just full of vegetation as topsoil. So we strip that vegetation, we strip that topsoil so it doesn't mix in with our future backfill material, our spoil piles. We get the house surveyed, and then we start digging. I guess behind the scenes, it's more of a, continuing that conversation with the trades that are coming up, and just monitoring how the house corners, now that they've been laid in and your houses and your lot is stripped within the LOD. How does that play out with the LOD? Do you have enough room to store all this material? Are you going to have a lot of haul off or haul in, those kinds
What
of
is
things?
an LOD?
It's limit of disturbance. It's where you're allowed. It's where you're allowed to build within, if you will.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
You're really good at communicating with our clients. What are those conversations like whenever you have to go to them and start talking to them about some of the challenges you're running into with rock or some of the other things that can happen too?
Right, which is ironic because I have a hard time speaking in front of people or in public, right? Yeah, I don't know how that has manifested itself, but for some reason, talking to clients over the phone, it just like has come so naturally over the years. Like I'm probably more nervous talking to you guys on this Zoom right now than I am having a casual conversation with one of our clients, which is just kind of silly to think about. But to your point, I think it's just kind of having the right turn of phrase, like learning each client. Some of them want you to explain it differently, and just like learning that quickly is super important. People are spending a lot of money. So understanding to an extent how they want things to be explained to them is vital to them being comfortable with me, being comfortable with Hibbs. That's something I put a big emphasis on when we do bring new clients on. What is your personality? How do I need to start explaining things? How much detail? How much lack of detail? What are your pressure points?
And I think, Craig, one of the things that I've appreciated about you is that transparency. That's one of our traits here at Hibbs. And one of the things I appreciate about you, and I know that's one of the things that you insist on whenever we're having some of our preliminary budget meetings with clients and talking to clients, is truly talking to them about this excavation phase and helping them understand what could happen. Because if we don't, we're setting us up for failure and the project up for failure, because they then will probably get frustrated and we're just barely into the project.
Yep, exactly. That's exactly where my mind goes. Not being super upfront, maybe over explaining the dangers of the lot that you have, the implications of the material that's under the ground, just not hammering that into the client. We've got a 2-year marriage with these people. Starting it off on a bad foot like that can spiral a relationship out of control really quickly. And having a 2-year relationship while we're building their home, and it starts off adversarial, it's more effort than is needed to get it back into a good place, just by simply not having explained thoroughly some of the challenges that we'd be expecting early on.
And I think that's what Craig and our project management team, Melody, does so well in Utah, is during that budgeting phase. And even it starts before that, we make sure clients understand, because Craig will do lot walks with clients, and he starts talking to them then about, okay, we've built in a lot 2 or 3 over, or we know what's coming up in this side of the development. I've talked to other builders, they've encountered this. He will start telling them then and there. And then when we go into the budgeting process, we will go to them and say, this is what the excavator is estimating. Can we put this in as a contingency? And to Craig's point, sometimes they say yes, sometimes they say no, but at least we've made them aware of it. As I said, in St. Louis, we always have our excavator give us what is it going to cost if we run into that clay soil, the plastic soil, which they do. And we put that in the budget and allow the client to decide, does it remain, does it not? Most of the lenders like you to have it in there, because what happens if you run into it and you don't have it as part of your loan? You have to come out of pocket, which you don't want to do. So our recommendation always is at least have a contingency in the budget for that money in case you run into it. If you don't, you can use it for selections. You can have it credited right back to you. But that's a very important point I think Craig and I are trying to drive home here, is that wherever you're building, the excavation component of the project is really unknown. Talk to the builder about how they handle the unforeseens, how they communicate with you? Do they charge you a fee to help mitigate whatever the issues are? I know we do not charge a builder fee for any work for unforeseen circumstances because I, quite frankly, as an owner, do not feel it's fair. Yes, it's extra work by the Hibbs team. I get that. I understand it. But it's already, the project is starting off. They're running into tens of thousands or hundreds of thousands of extra dollars. I don't want to take advantage of that. I want to get them through it and turn them back over to the construction team and move on with construction.
So what's the most expensive mistake that could be made at this phase then?
Oh, Craig, you get to answer that one. Try to avoid it, please.
Not relying on a surveyor to lay out the house, to lay out your LOD, your limit of disturbance fencing, just all the way through your foundation pour, just not relying on your surveyor to help you give you those points. And that can get bad. That can get bad really quick if you're just pulling tapes across the ground and hammering rebar and saying, oh, there's your house corner, see you later. That could get really expensive really quickly.
And didn't that happen in Kirkwood recently, where the
You looking at me?
Yeah, not with us. Not with us, but wasn't...
Yeah, it was all over the news too.
Right.
It had to do with elevation, floor heights, and the house was too tall. And Craig, it was a huge battle because Kirkwood is one of the older communities within the St. Louis market, but it is one of the most sought after communities as well. There's a lot of infill construction. They have a lot of rules and regulations and building heights and all sorts of things. And this home was either too wide or too tall or something, and it was all over the news for a long time. I can't remember what the resolution is. I think they
tore it down.
They had to tear it down.
It was 1/4 of an inch,
Yeah.
too. It was like off by 1/4 of an inch,
Yeah.
and the whole thing had to come down.
Whew.
Surveying is important. It can cost you a lot of money.
Yeah, a lot of the builds in Utah, Melody, require us. We do surveying at the footings when the foundation's poured, after framing to make sure we're hitting all of our approved elevations because we want to know early. I mean, it all starts, Craig, right with the foundation because if you're off there, you're going to be off as you build, as you go vertical.
Well, yeah, it starts with the dig, realistically. The footing guys, it's not their responsibility to check that elevation. It's the excavator and the builder at that time before the footing guys come in. So if you don't do that, if you don't rely on a surveyor to help you achieve that, you're putting concrete in the ground that's already incorrect, and then it just compounds and compounds and compounds, and next thing you know, you're 1/4 inch over height and you're tearing it down.
So when we're in St. Louis, how are we managing surveys here then?
We don't have the same height restrictions. It's our standard policy. We don't have to, but we do. We go in, for example, and before we pour the footings, we'll have a surveyor go out and spot the footings to make sure they're in the right location, the right elevation. And a lot of times then we'll come back after a wall is poured. It depends upon the municipality, but we don't have a lot of the same height restrictions as we do in Utah. And so it's not as critical here as it is there. Kirkwood it is. They have what's called the finished floor height that we have to hit. So they make you do a survey of that finished floor before you can start framing on top of it. So it kind of depends upon the municipality.
How do you make sure that your builder is addressing that? Is that a question that you ask before you hire them, or?
Trust but verify, I guess.
We have all that documentation within Hibbs. I don't even know that most clients are even really aware, other than there's a squiggly line on their plans that says do not exceed 30 feet above X elevation. They wouldn't be aware that it is a restriction, most likely, until it becomes a problem, which at that point, I guess they're kind of made their bed.
So really, Melody, what it comes down to, quite frankly, is, again, find a reputable builder, interview builders, trust your builder, trust your team, put together the team, and you just have to let them do their job because Craig is right. Most of the clients aren't going to know what the different designations on the plans are, what the floor heights are, what the ceiling heights are. That's just information that they don't need to know. They probably won't know, so you have to trust the builder.
Our listeners are going to know now.
Well, they will. They will. That's a good point. I really want to talk about foundations a little bit, right?
Yes, because they're different all over the place. And, when we were planning this episode, one of the things that we discussed is how differently the pours are treated between the two markets.
Like here, most of our foundations, Craig, are in grade, right? And they're usually 9-10 feet tall. In the Park City market, we're dealing with a totally different animal.
Yep, everything's below grade. Sometimes very, very below grade. One of our superintendents, Sean, he has a house that had a 16-foot cut, and that wall was 17.5 foot high. It was 12 inches thick. It had double matte number 5 bar going through the whole thing. I mean, it was a piece of art in and of itself.
I don't know what any of those things meant. What is double matte?
So rebar is gauged off of a number. So there's number 4, which is typical, which is about a 1/2 inch diameter. Number 5 kind of is the step above. It's like the gauge, I guess, of the rebar. And that's pretty close to an inch thick. 5 bar is very irregular, even in the Park City market. It is utilized quite often, but it's still not really like that much of a standard. It's used a lot in like foundation retaining walls. If you're retaining dirt against the foundation that's somewhere between like 10 and 12 feet, you'll start seeing number 5 bar detail. Extra big piece of rebar to keep that big, tall wall rigid.
And we don't see that in St. Louis at all.
Ever?
Yeah,
Okay.
for a standard. I don't know that I've ever, I'm sure there have been some. I don't remember any. But Craig, really what it comes down to is when you start thinking about the actual design of the house, when you start thinking about the actual lot itself, what drives that foundation is going to be a combination between the lot, the topography, and the design and the desire of the client as far as what they're looking for. So really, it all comes together with the architect and moves on to the engineer and finally to the builder.
Yeah, the topography is huge. Ironically, we were talking about height restrictions. Wasatch County, Summit County, Toohey specifically, Promontory, all these developments, they rely on your height restriction based on the natural grade, the topography of the lot before you started building. So that has a huge impact into how we build the home, how we dig the home. Lots that are just kind of like all over the place. It's hard to dig flat when you're on a 45-degree angle, right? Just one of those extra little time-consuming things that come up. There's a ton of factors into building on the side of a mountain.
With these two very different types of foundations, what does high performance mean between the two markets? Is it different?
I mean, up here, I think the biggest thing is just keeping the temperature of being so far underground from seeping into the house long term. Obviously, water for 10 to 15 feet underground. So keeping that water from coming into the house is a huge thing. There's a lot of different methods. Out here in Park City, we do what's called a damp proof waterproofing of the exterior foundation wall. It's kind of like a tar liquid that gets spread along the foundation to keep water from seeping in. It just seals that outside face of the wall to where the water just sheds down the wall instead of going into it, hits the footing, where we have a perimeter drain. It's just a bunch of gravel with a pipe that'll collect that water and shoot it off and get it away from the house. We do extensive amount of insulation on all of the homes up here in Park City. Wasatch County has some pretty big restrictions on the minimums. I know that we do take it probably 2 or 3 steps further than what Wasatch County requires, which helps a lot with that thermal break between those foundation walls in the home.
Melody, we do a lot of things similar. For example, we do the upgraded damp proofing on our foundation walls. One of the things we do a little bit different here, though, is on top of our footings, we have that capillary break, where we actually try to make sure that water cannot be absorbed up through the footing and up into the foundation wall. So we actually have a capillary break on top of our footing in this market. But we do perimeter drains. In this market, we also do interior drains, which run to the sump bucket, because we do so much in grade that we want to make sure that we control the water and get it up and out if necessary. Do a lot of insulation as well, whether it's a walkout wall or just underneath the lower level slab as well. We do a lot of insulation as well. But those are some of the things that, talk a little bit about how we build when it comes to high performance homes.
One of the things that I want to kind of circle into is that in St. Louis, we're doing a lot of golf simulators in the basement. And so there are some differences in heights and pours and things like that. So can we talk a little bit about those unique basements, accounting for extra deep areas for golf simulators, and if we have that in Utah as well, I would assume.
Yeah, we do. We're building, I think, 1 or 2 homes right now that will have a golf simulator. We do a lot of unique, taller pours out in the Utah market, especially since our Many of our foundations are walkout and framed walls, so it really feels like you're on the main level, even though you're down in the lower level, if you will. So we have to pay attention to a lot of that. But here in the St. Louis market, we're doing a lot of simulators. And again, in my mind, it starts with the design by the architect, because you want to make sure the architect gives you the correct dimensions so you have enough room, not only for the screen, but for the projector and for whomever is using the simulator, right? We got into a project recently where, quite frankly, the architect had never done it before. And we actually had to kind of retrofit the lower level to make the golf simulator fit properly. So we learned a lesson, and that architect certainly learned a lesson. But we've done a couple more since then, and we understand the dimensions and everything that goes along with it. But you also have to keep in mind, okay, that's the low point of the basement. What about possible water intrusion there? What are we going to do? And do we need a sump bucket there that we can use to help and all? But Craig, we do a lot of very unique basements in the Park City area. We do a lot of finished lower levels where there's many bathrooms, there's dog washes, there's a lot going on. So from a project management standpoint and a superintendent standpoint, you all have to be on your toes to make sure that we're on top of all of this.
Yeah, got to get all those things underneath the slab, underground, prior to all of your concrete being poured. Super important. I think we do kind of have a unique benefit that is obviously different from St. Louis, to where, depending on the detail, most of our foundation walls are either 11 foot tall or 12 foot tall. So our basements are always extensively tall, and that's pre-drop, with the idea being we're pouring this 11 foot tall wall if our joists are sitting top of wall, or it's a 12 foot tall wall if our joists are inside. So it's just depending on that detail there, but 99% of the time it's 11 or 12 feet. That way, when we drop underneath or in the basement to cover up all the mechanical that's in that ceiling, you generally finish out that right at 9.5 foot. Adding a golf simulator, it's actually pretty prevalent up here, because you already have the ceiling height. It's just kind of manipulating the stuff that goes in that ceiling so you can maximize that height pre-rough and pre-construction.
If you could say one thing to those who are listening, who are thinking about building a custom home, that are either about to break ground or seriously thinking about building a custom home, that refers back to this conversation, what would you tell them?
Take advantage of your due diligence period. If you're not going to get your own soil report for your lot specifically, and you're just relying on the county or the subdivision or your neighbor across the street to give you that information, just make sure it actually fits your lot, because it does. Even within Tuhey and Promontory, it varies from lot to lot quite significantly. Getting your own soil report during your due diligence phase, I think, can help prepare you for the cost implications of excavation.
I think that was an excellent overview. I learned a lot, and I've been working in this company for a while, so that was really fun.
Well, when the whole subject, Craig, came up, honestly, of excavation and foundation, it took me half a second to say, we need to talk to Craig, because that's your background, that's your expertise, that's what you enjoy, that's what you're so good at. So we can't thank you enough for your time. Keep up the good work. The foundation is one of the only things in a custom home you truly cannot fix cheaply later. What gets decided and poured here carries forward into framing, MEP, and finish work. This is where Season 8 preparation either pays off or it doesn't. The least photogenic phase of the build is one everything depends upon. What happens underground doesn't show up in your Instagram grid. It shows up in your floors, in your walls, and your energy bills for the next 30 years. And the expertise and experience of your building team is key to getting this right.
Do you have any questions about the process or an idea for a future episode? If you do, we want you to bring them to us. You can email us at podcast@hibbshomes.com, call 844-HIBBS20, or find our Reddit community, Art of Custom Building. And find us on podcasts everywhere.
Have any questions about the process or ideas for future episodes? Bring them to us. Email podcast@hibbshomes.com, call 844-HIBBS20, or find us at Reddit at r/Art of Custom Building. The Art of Custom is produced by Hug Monster Sound. Our editor is Sarah Fink, with original music by Adam Frickfordine. Thanks for listening.